Chapter 11. Jack was now left alone in that big old office, with all the thrown around stuff and the fish tank and half-dead guppies all over the place, waiting for what next to happen. He could hear the young man out in the hallway waking up again, starting screaming, and after that, the characteristic sound of pepper spray and stun gun. And then he stopped. Again. The only thing you could hear was the rest of his dingleberries playing a nice little Christmas carol, slowly fading away. And then sweet silence. Jack went to the window and looked the several hundred feet down at the street, and at the little ant people running around with stuff up their asses. On the way home to their little ant hills, Jack felt really sorry for his fellow cave brother. But he was raised by the system to be a butt-stuffing nut-slupper, and not to question anything. But something has happened. Dick. Double Knot story. Not so long ago, Jack visited his old friend, Dick Fiddler, code name, Agent Double Knot, named after his parachute-sized ball sack, and with Jack's micro-nuts, they made the perfect good cop bad cop team. But now Dick Fiddler was dying. And it was a really bad-looking Dick he met at the hospital. And beside him stood two nuns praying for him. And Jack thought that it didn't seem to have helped much. Those nuns just don't know Dick. But when Dick saw Jack, he lightened up and smiled all over his Dick face. And he told the nuns to stop praying for something they'll never get anyway, and send them out with the message that an oral salvation a little later might get Dick upstanding, nice and fine, like a fine young dandy. But for now, you'll have to be excused. Jack sat down beside his old friend, and Agent Double Knot looked at him and said, "Quarter knot." "Yes, Double Knot. As you can see, Jack, I am on my way. I think I've stuffed my last Camaro up the last bender ass. My humongous ball sack just needs so much extra blood transportation, and my goddamn heart just can't keep up anymore. They tried to talk me into letting them chop him off, but that's not gonna happen," he shouted, and made sure that everybody at the hospital could hear it. "You just don't cut off a man's balls. No sir." "All friend," Double Knot continued, "I got a thing for you to hear. I got a story. And I got it from my father who's got it from his father. You know Jack, that due to my humongous ball sack I am physical unable of having sexual intercourse. So I don't have any kids to pass it on to. You're all I got. And I have to tell it to someone. This story must not die with me." Now Dick looked a little more fresh with that distinct blue-violet color on his Dick face, and that is a good sign when it come to Dicks. It was like that he now was to be relieved from a big burden, and almost no longer looked like a guy dying from humongous ballsack condition, as it's called. And he continued, "Here it comes Jack. Straight from my grandpa. The meeting. At that time, when the story begins, just after the Civil War back in the 1860s. My grandfather was at that point a mess boy for one of the North State generals, a young man called Custer, who also happened to be one of the head pounders. At this moment the pounders had established themselves as the world leaders, and they had made a worldwide connection built on knowledge, like back in the caves, but on a much bigger scale. And they'd come to the conclusion that all they needed to control the whole wide world was the council. And the council was boiled down to 12 pounders, and the president it was what's left of the original pounders. They come to the conclusion, the fewer the better, just enough to rule the earth. It was the Council of 12, the biggest super duper assholes in the whole wide world. And they were really smart too. The council operated like a jury. Everyone had one vote in every case, but they all had to agree on those cases. Simply the best way to find the best solution. This was the most efficient way to govern mankind. The Council of 12 have a head pounder. He was the guy with the best overview, and therefore had most knowledge. But the head pounder didn't have a vote. Still, He had the last word in cases that simply couldn't get to an agreement, which almost never happened, cause the only thing these assholes respected was another asshole's opinion. And these guys were the biggest assholes in the world. And they knew everybody was trying their best to be the biggest asshole all the time. And the president was the ass you just listened to. He knows all the smallest details within human psyche and how they're connected, and how to exploit them, and he's so mean that it's beyond normal human ability to accept the fact that he's actually out of this planet. At that time it was not unusual to see old pounders having themselves a young bender for intimate pleasure. And my grandpa was in exactly that position. He was hired by Custer to fulfill certain needs. He mostly had to dress up like an Indian and then get his ass violently mutilated. It was real nasty, and he cried a lot, and he didn't like the terrible molestation of his asshole. His protege, Custer, had a thing with Indians, and every time he got dressed up, that sick man just went bananas on that little innocent Indian asshole. But the job came with all the luxury ever, including genuine date juice that all man loves so much. And my grandpa got addicted to the juice, and you know about juice junkies. They get those really bad diarrhea attacks that follows in the slipstream, so to speak. But here we go, Dick said. One time at a pounder meeting, where my grandpa was placed in a broom closet, so they could have a nice little quickie during their meeting. The closet was placed in a corner of the room so they still could hear what was going on, while they were humping that little mess boy sore Indian diarrhea ass. But the pounders forgot all about him, drinking date juice and all. And while my granddad was sitting in the tiny broom closet with his Indian pants down his knees, and a sore ass, he suddenly heard the head pounder raising his voice. Council of 12. Listen up. This might be the Last Supper, and therefore I hired Da Vinci to paint it, just to underline the importance of what is going to happen. But for some strange reason he said, I've got this weird feeling that someone in this room is gonna betray me. And when my grandpa heard that, he kept really quiet in the closet with his sore ass and bad Indian diarrhea pushing on real bad. But what he didn't know was that it was just good council humor, and it's the way the head pounder always started a meeting. And he continued, old friends and assholes, our dear departed brother, Mr. Lincoln, is no longer with us. He did a great job freeing the slaves, and now we've got a whole lot more asses to pound. Slavery was bad business. Slaves don't get paid, so they don't buy stuff. That's cave logic. And we just wanted to pound those black asses real bad. And now they are free. Let's give them a hand. And they all cheered and clapped their hands for them free dumbass niggers, and the whole council looked mega happy. And you, Mr. Boot, did a fine job in the theater, shooting the president and all. And for that we all respect you. The head pounder looked at Mr. Boot, and Mr. Boot looked really proud, still with the little dried up presidential brain sitting on his mustache. He kept it as a little souvenir, because the head pounder proceeded, we simply need a replacement. So, Mr. Abraham Lincoln, despite your weird appearance, looking like a dead horse, we'll give you 1 minute of silence. After that, he continued, because this time folks, we're entering a whole new era, and for that, we need a scientist, and the worst asshole scientist ever is you, young Mr. Edison. Welcome on board. All the assholes clapped their hands and Edison felt mega important. You will mainly be used in the coming process to show all the new scientists that you can get away with anything if your moral standards are flexible. And we also want you to fuck the whole scientific community up in a degree that no one really knows what's going on. We most certainly don't want knowledge to be organized or centralized. That way it will be harder to use for the common good of mankind. And Mr. Edison, not all knowledge is good knowledge. So, we want you to explain the world through what's measurable, and ridicule everything else. And those who won't follow those simple directions will be eliminated from the scientific society. But your main purpose will be to lower the moral standards of the upcoming scientists, and teach them to be real assholes, and to focus more on themselves than saving humanity. A discipline that you are mastering with great perfection. And for that we all respect you. And you have already shown your potential, despite your young age. And young Mr. Edison looked really proud being such a big asshole, and he really liked that they respected him. Respect was very dear to him. But for now, Mr. Edison, we'll go through the real history of man, as only the council knows it. So, listen up, this might come as a surprise. As we all know, all men are divided. That's a fact. After the Homo caves with sweet butt sex and weird animals on the wall, with the giraffe coming out of the butt, and great respect for all mankind, and Virgin Mary with crap on the nose. We at that time, small-time pounders, took our first little steps out of the Homo caves to be full-blown pounders by using the little trick that kick-started it all. We removed the respect. And without respect, you can do anything. And those brave right out of the cave pounders with absolutely no respect was visited by and hold on to your nuts, Mr. Edison, the Galactic Federation. The federation of all the universe and all the strange people living out there. And they told us that pounding benders was good. It was a part of the big plan. And they said they really liked our good work, but they would like to speed up the process. So they told us about all kinds of different mechanisms that could be used. Like money, and religion, and countries, and races, and slapping nuts, and all the other good stuff you can use if you want to be in charge. So Mr. Edison, welcome to the biggest secret of all mankind. We control Earth. And, with the acceptance of the whole goddamn universe. What about that? My granddad was still listening from the closet. And his diarrhea was really pushing on hard now, and that mutilated Indian asshole was not at much help. And it has never been a good sign when you have to use your butt cheek muscles to hold back a diarrhea. Because those muscles will eventually run out of steam. It was real bad. But now, the head pounder continued. We're facing a problem. I've just had a meeting with the Galactic Federation, and they told me that they are closing down the operation. And they are planning a flood, like the last time, with Noah, to wipe out all mankind and let him drown. They said we'd gone slow and inefficient, and they were on a schedule. And they're giving up on us. The job wasn't done. For some reason. They never told me why. But you know what? Fellow pounders, he proceeded, and raised his voice. Don't ever fuck with a pounder. Not even the Galactic Federation. Fuck 'em. And he kept on, in a sneaky voice. So I used the oldest trick in the book. And he smiled a real ugly smile. We made a bet. And listen up. Here's the bet. If you give me 200 years, I will turn man into little ants, controlled by parents, with their heads up their asses, choking on their own crap, and smiling all the way. And all the Galactic Federation started laughing, real loud, just like I wanted them to, and they bought the trick. So we made a bet. They said that mankind is stupid, and a bad design, but simply not that stupid. So dear brothers and assholes of the council, we are going to make mankind suffocate on his own feces within 200 years. Otherwise he'll drown like Noah. And I've got the most evil plan ever made in the history of everything. And he laughed really scary. And all the council of 12 were also laughing real loud, and drank day juice and cheered. This was the exact time my grandpa was waiting for. He just let all the diarrhea go in one great big anal explosion. Now they all were laughing, so they couldn't hear the splatter noises. But in that operation, his ass broke, and didn't work the same anymore. So there was no muscle control. And you don't want that. And it was all mega stinky.